right. Welcome to a September 5th edition of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. We'll start by calling roll here. Why don't we just go ahead and we'll just start at the end. Just introduce yourself. We'll do it that way.
Hello, I'm Alanda Jenkins, and I'm here representing the Whidbey Playhouse.
Margaret Livermore, I'm representing Oak Harbor Main Street Association.
Brian Stuckey, City of Oak Harbor.
Susan Voles-Simmons, and I'm the General Manager of the Candlewood Suites.
Dana McCullough, Executive Director, Oak Harbor Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, and so we are missing Pamela, and then we have a spot that is yet to be filled, but someone is in the wings. So first thing is approval of minutes, and I understand we're approving minutes from last year, and maybe not everyone was on the committee at that time.
I forgot to make copies.
That's okay. I think they were sent electronically. I'm assuming no one has any objections to the minutes. Someone want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion made. Do we have a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Public comment time. Anyone in the audience there want to make any sort of public comment? Now is your chance. Going once, going twice. Sold. So that takes us over to going into an overview of a Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. Our purpose, I know some of you have been on here for a couple years, but for some of you this is new. So let's turn it over to Wendy, and she is going to let us know a little bit about what we're doing here today.
Thank you. I'm Wendy Horn. I'm the Grants Administrator and also the LTAC Liaison. So just going to give you a brief overview for those of you who are not familiar with the LTAC or it's your first year. We do have some new folks. So per RCW 6728-1817, a city or county with a population of 5,000 or more that collects the lodging tax must also establish a lodging tax advisory committee to review applications and make funding recommendations to its legislative body, which is the city council. So we have had a lodging tax advisory committee for many, many years. I can't even tell you how many. But again, it's made up of 3 receivers, and those are individuals who represent organizations that can receive the grants, 3 collectors, which are the businesses that collect the tax, and 1 city council member who acts as the chair, and our finance director over here, David Goldman, is the city designee, or the and he's an ex officio member.
Present.
He can answer all the hard questions. So the purpose of LTAC, I think most of you understand that the lodging tax is, the purpose of it is to basically use the revenues for tourism marketing operations of special events or festivals, operations and capital expenditures of tourism-related facilities owned or operated by the city, or operations of tourism-related facilities owned and operated by a nonprofit. So this is just a brief overview of the process for the grants. Basically, the council approves the funding level, LTAC meets, and we set the guidelines and the timelines. The grant period opens, it closes, then you meet again to hear presentations if you choose to. Presentations are completely optional. You guys get to decide if you want to do that this year or not. And then you meet to deliberate and award the funding levels that then go to the city council for recommendation. And if the city council approves all those recommendations, then the final step is for us, the staff, to execute the grant documents. So, does anybody have any questions about that?
Carry on.
Okay. So you might have heard, you might not have heard, we presented to the council some options on August 20th for funding levels for 2025, and they approved a total expenditure of $450,000 from the fund balance Of that, there is about $161,000 in commitments from prior year multi-year grants. So we have, I think, 4 or 5 organizations that have 3-year grants. 2025 will be their last year for that. But that is the commitment. And then we also have an agreement with the Whidbey and Camano Island Tourism for $50,000 a year. So that's also committed in there. So that leaves a total of $238,840 for the single year awards, which is what the applications will be going out for this year. So, any questions there?
I did have one question.
Yes.
The multi-year, how do you get on that multi-year list?
So it was in it would have been the fall 2022. We put out a call for multi-year and single-year applications. Honestly, I don't know how far it goes back, but we've been doing that cycle apparently. The city has been doing that cycle for a number of years anyways. So in fall of 2025, if LTAC approves and the council approves, we'll put out another call for multi-year, which would be a 3-year contract for any organization to apply for. Yeah, it was just, that was something when I first was hired, that was the cycle we were in, so. I don't think there's any extra stipulations for being a multi-year grant either. Okay, so this is just a suggestion. This is a suggested tentative timeline. Obviously, the funding level decision was made on August 20th. We're meeting today. Suggestion is to open the application window from September 23rd through October 4th, with meetings the second week of October and potentially second or third week of October to actually make the recommendations and then get to the city council for approval. Ideally, they have a meeting on the 1st and the 15th of October. So it would be kind of hard to get it to a council meeting on the 15th of October. So we could potentially present it at the workshop on October 23rd, or we could push it to the November 6th council meeting for approval, which still gives us plenty of time to execute the contracts by the end of this year so that they would be in effect of January 1st, 2025 for the organizations that receive it. So the reason for the relatively late date of September 23rd to put out the announcement, even though it's only the 5th of October, is that we have to have between a 10 and 20 day window of notice. So in order for it to get into the Whidbey News Times, which is our the city's proof of notice, we need to get it into them today in order for it to be published on next Wednesday, on September 11th, and then the following Saturday. And then that would give us that 10-day window to open it up on the 23rd of September.
Dana, did you have a question?
I was just curious if we present at the workshop as well as the city council meeting, or is it one or the other?
I think we could do one or the other. Normally, the council does not take action during a workshop, but they do take exception sometimes, and they will act on items if we request them to.
One other question, I assume, because we always have, we're going to do the newspaper notice, but there will, I'm sure Maggie will work on social media, website, things of that nature too.
I have a press release ready to go, and I've already asked Maggie to get social media ready
Wonderful.
to go.
Okay, thank you.
And I also plan to send out the announcement to all past recipients, and like past recipients from last year through the last 6 or 7 years.
It might be worth contacting, Dan and I just came from the Island County Tourism Embrace Whidbey Board, so I can always send them the information too,
Oh, of
since
course.
that's their thing, even though it's all island. There are
Yeah.
some Oak Harbor members, so.
Sure. So how does that schedule look?
I mean, it looks good to me. I guess the only thing I would say is when we say meeting again at second week in October, I kind of like how you did with the Survey Monkey, asking everyone what their best times are. I hesitate to say, let's set a day today, especially with two people not here.
Right.
But I personally do think allowing the applicants to present is absolutely essential. I know there was a couple times that didn't happen, partly due to COVID and stuff, but allowing folks to kind of plead their case, I think, is very important.
If we don't settle that calendar today, will we not have enough time? It sounded like you needed to get that to AB News Times for that window of notice.
No, so the window of notice is just for the application period. And then following subsequent meetings, we can figure out a schedule between now and the end of October for our next meeting for, if you guys want to do, if you want to hear presentations from all the applicants, we'll set a date for that. And what we usually give 3 to 5 minutes for each applicant. So it's depending on the number of applicants, hour and a half meeting or so for that one. And then that's usually followed up by a final meeting where we've done it in a variety of ways, but the chair will go over just kind of a general, hey, this looks like the funding is available, these are the scores, and I'll go through the grading here in just a minute, but and then you guys can determine what you want to make recommendations to the city for.
Any other questions about the timeline? I mean,
I'll just
we'll do the grading next, but
Okay, I just had a question. For presentations, if we sit on the board, we can't make the presentation for our organization, correct?
Correct, yeah, so that has changed a little bit from years past. So we did get some guidance from our legal department in terms of conflict of interest. So if your organization does put in an application, then we ask that somebody else from your organization do the presentation. And then when it comes to voting or grading, you just don't vote or grade your own application.
Or contribute to the conversation either.
Right, thank you.
yeah, and that is different from years past. So it won't count as a zero. It just won't be factored into the score.
right.
This is one of probably the strangest commissions in that, I mean, it's almost everyone here has a conflict of interest, and that's just how it's set up by the state of Washington. So
Right.
we're trying to minimize that as much as possible. Anything else? Okay. Carry on to application grading.
So can I just assume we approve this timeline?
Yeah, just again with the date of the meeting is the Survey Monkey, and I just hesitate to set a time
Yes.
today. So that sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so, doing also something new this year, which maybe Mikhail can help me here. So we're doing, we've moved the PDF application to an online form. Can you click on that, Mikhail, and see if it will go to the form center so I can show them what it looks like? Maybe not. Okay. Well, she's trying. Generally speaking, you have the single year application in what I just gave you. So basically what I did was I just took this form and made it into an online format. We have a program that does that nowadays. So when people log in or when they go to the link, if you don't have a login to the City of Oak Harbor's page, you're not going to be able to save your survey or your application online. So it's going to be kind of one of those one and done if you don't have a login. But if you do, you can save and go back and do it. I'm looking at Mikhail to give me a little guidance there too, because Oh, okay. But what will happen is I'm going to put a copy of the Word document online for people to download, excuse me, and work off of. So you won't have to just type in blindly. You'll be able to work off this and then copy paste into the online form. And ideally, that will make it a little easier for folks. The other thing that is also in your packet is is basically the instructions on how to do this. So this is what the online form is going to look like. And it's, basically, if you have it in a Word document, you'll be able just to copy paste everything. And I think I gave enough characters, pretty much 3,000 characters for every question, which is almost a whole page. That's a lot of words. So hopefully people feel like they have enough space for all of that, but, so, Mikhail, if somebody, if they have if they sign up for the city, how do they do that exactly?
Oh, when it goes live, you can, it'll ask you if you want to create an account to save your progress. It'll save progress, but it does not save attachments.
Okay.
So,
So it'll just ask you up front. If you don't have an account already with the city of Oak Harbor, then you could create one and then save your uploads, which there's only a couple of things that we request that you upload, so.
When you say an account, is that the same account that someone creates? If we have the how do I link and then report a concern where you create an account, that is the same account then? Okay.
the city website. So if you pay your utility bill or, yeah, it's all the same.
But they can still fill out the old school way, bring it in,
Well, no,
Or email only.
We were, I was putting in that it was only through the online format. So that also is an option. We can make it so that people could email it to us in the Word document, or they could do the online form. That is optional to you guys.
That might be worth discussing. I mean, I love the idea of it being through this. I certainly have a preference for this, but as one individual, I still like the ability to do it the other way as well. But I don't know if there's any thoughts on that. So when I say the other way, I mean the way it was done before. We fill it out, you write it legibly, type it in, email it, or this. Do you like the idea of being both or just the online?
I question why.
Don't the mic.
I question why they don't have the option to hand deliver the application.
So that was before my time, but it basically, I think it rolled back to COVID. I think when it was the COVID days, they went to completely electronic version. So if we want to go back and roll it back to, you can turn it in by hand, you can email it to ltac@oakharbor.org, or you can do the online format, that's fine. As long as it hits the deadline of 4:30, we're good. So that's your guys' choice.
I think email also ensures it is before the deadline. I mean, you have a record of it before the deadline, as opposed, I mean, I had one year where people contacted me literally the day after, and I had to say, sorry, the deadline was yesterday at 4:30, and someone could conceivably, or I don't want to say it could get lost, but it could, where a digital record, I mean, that's not really up for debate then.
I agree. I think having it both email and online is a good idea. Gives them options.
Yeah. I know in the past, I think it was because they wanted to have it in a digital format to send it out to us to review. And if it's a hand copy, then you got to do the city has to do all the scanning and entering and all that kind of stuff.
There's that. And Mikhail just mentioned too that the online form, it numbers everything as well. It numbers each application. I don't know that matters, but.
And we can set it to email directly to certain people at certain points. It's just more complicated.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. If you wanted to have all of the online applications directly emailed to you as they come in, or would you like just one big packet like we've done in the past with all of the applications together?
I prefer, myself, a packet, as I think, A, we're not seeing our email, and two, I think it's also the most equitable, as opposed to one getting in, hey, I was first right away, and then I just think having it in one, so you're looking at the same time, and not like you had a week and a half to think about one, and then the second one comes in, and so on and so forth. But if anyone has any objection to that, it's okay
Yeah.
too.
And I do, after much more thought about it, think that the online or the email is probably more efficient, and we have a better record so that nothing gets lost.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, and I think the packet's better because then if you're gonna send multiple emails, what if you can't find one email, you know? If it comes in one big hunk, then you got it there to work on.
Okay.
I agree with the packet.
good, yeah,
I do as well.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So we'll give them the option of email or online, and I'll collect all of the applications, and after the 4th, you'll get a big bulk email from me. Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so also, the information I gave you, is this form. This is just kind of a snapshot of it, but basically, this is the point value that's assigned to each of the questions currently. I don't know if you want to go over it point by point and discuss it, or if you are, this hasn't changed to my knowledge for many, many years.
And if I remember, much of this on here is required by the state. Is that correct? David may know. I thought some, because some of these questions seemed redundant to me, but then I remember asking at one meeting that, you know, we turn this into the state, and the state's got to.
Yeah, we turn it into JLARC, so it's one of those requirements. Turn in the questions themselves. I don't know if they're the wording is exactly what the state says, but it gets to what the state is asking.
Right, the questions in the application address what JLARC is looking for. The point value, I do not know how that came up in terms of the city's applications. But on the flip side, at the end of a year, when somebody has a grant, they do have to answer 8 very specific questions about the numbers of people that came to the island for their event, and et cetera. But anyways, I don't know if that's something you want to discuss right now, or if you want to just keep the point
I
value
do have a
as is.
question
Yes.
about question 5, that whole shoulder season, October and May, and then it says grading is not all or none, so
Oh.
they could be partially in that time?
It's supposed to be all or none.
Okay, okay,
It's an all or none question.
okay.
I had a comment about the grading sheet. When it's presented to the public what the scores are, I'm requesting that a committee member's name not be attached to any particular score.
Correct.
Because I got harassed last year,
Oh,
and wasn't even my score. So anyhow, I just want to make sure that happens.
yes. Last year when we did the grading, and we can change it, because last year we did identify recipient 1, recipient 2, recipient 3, as far as the, and you all have seats. So your recipient seat 1, your recipient seat 2, your collector 1, your collector 2, and that's how we lined it out. But we can definitely take those numbers off so that it is not identifiable.
It will kind of be in a way that
You won't be.
I can't score my own application, but, I mean, I know the county does it differently than what we do. They send out a list and they said, these are just the total scores. They don't attach anybody's name to anything. They just list the applicant and what the score was. That way, the people that are deciding don't get harassed by people that feel like they should get better scores.
And I apologize, I don't remember exactly, but when we presented to the city council, that might have been one of the sheets that we did present to them, so we can change that so that it's just a total score.
Yeah, it
if
was
that
on,
makes more
it was on the
sense.
presentation side, when people were able to sit, when we were making our decision as to who we were gonna, you know, what actual scores we were putting to those applications.
Okay.
There was people listening in on that, and not that meeting, so.
Oh, okay.
Before it went to city council.
Okay.
Is there any reason why, because there's not only the presentation, but there's also the packet. And even though someone would have to search a little bit for the packet that's presented to council, it's still public record. So can we have it, because yes, to your point, obviously if we did it in the past where it's receiver 1 and there's something for Main Street and you put 0, it's gonna be obvious who receiver 1 is. And it's even sad that we even have to talk in this way. But can we just do, and I can help compile it too, just a lump score, this application got this application got that. And we can average out the score for each category. I don't mind assisting with that. So you could take item 1 and just have the overall average of that, not what receiver 1 scored it or receiver 2 scored
Right.
it, and so on and so forth.
Do we submit our scores prior to that meeting then?
Oh,
Wait,
well.
or is that,
So at the next meeting, that's where they kind of make their presentation. And then we give the scores, not last minute. We need a little bit of time to do that, and I will happily do. I know the first year I did this, it was super awkward in that we looked at these scores, we kind of looked at each other like, well, what do we do? Do we eliminate? Do we take the ones from here to here, from here to here? I'm happy to kind of do what I did last year, which was I compile it, I made a recommendation. Doesn't mean it's set, we can hash it all we want, but it is kind of awkward when you're looking at each other and you're like, what should we do? It is a little easier when someone says, how about this? And I think how I did it last year is I basically took like the outliers off, you know? So if it was everything that was like 70 above, let's do it. But if there was one that was like 50, well, that was clearly an outlier. So when do they need to have those scores in after the first meeting?
Yep,
I don't remember
that's a-
seeing it on the chart. Maybe it was there.
That's a good point, because this is how it ended up looking last year.
Yep, and that shows the receiver, that shows
It does.
collector.
It shows
Yeah.
the receivers, and then it also shows, you know, for the ones that we didn't opt to fund at the bottom, were the totals that were actually awarded. I think what we have asked people in the past is the presentation date is, well, let's just say it's a Wednesday. We've asked people to get their scores in by like that Friday, if at all possible, so that there's a relatively quick turnaround. So it just kind of depends on when we pick that date, for when the next meeting would be, to compile everything, to get it to the council member so he can do his magic and make a recommendation to the group.
So if we did this, so imagine instead of it being each individual person, it's basically just the total at the bottom.
Right.
That would be okay, you think, Mark? So it's just the total. I mean, on the one hand, you don't get to see the full array of averages, but I can understand it does add the anonymity to it.
You know, you
Okay.
could just talk to LTAC, they're doing, county LTAC, they're doing theirs right now, and ask them how they do theirs, because when I got the sheet, it was just the name of the applicant and their total number.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they have an idea how they go about doing it,
Yeah.
yeah.
I can send her an email.
And then we received the packet, and their applications prior to the presentation, so we can have comments and questions, correct?
Yes, yeah, you'll get all the applications and the grading sheet. I'll actually have this all filled out for you blank, obviously. Well, not that one, but this one will be filled out with applicant name and their event, and then for each applicant, and each committee member will get this grading sheet, and then you can take their application. You can pre-score it if you want before their application, and then after their, presentation, and then after their presentation, you can go back and rescore it if you want to. That's up to you as an individual, how you want to do that.
And then if you go back, can you go back to the one that showed the breakdown one more time, please? And on, what I may do is, on this one, I did the scores, and then I did it, it's hard to read, but where I took out the top score and the bottom score, I might not do, and the reason I did that was kind of to eliminate what we were talking about, you know, so you're not scoring your application. I eliminated that to kind of make it a little more average, but that may not be necessary. assuming no one's putting 0 for everybody else, you know. I don't know if that part will be necessary or not, but we'll see how the scores come in, because everyone scores a little bit different. You have some people who feel a little nicer and everyone gets really high, and then you have some people who are a little more blunt, so. Okay, anything else with the scoring or the grading? No? Is that all we have, Wendy? Is it member comments, or do you have something else for us there?
Just a couple more evaluation considerations, just so you know. There's no requirement that priority funding be given to applicants that expect to generate the largest number of tourists. There's also no expectation that you award recipients who's provided services that indirectly increase tourism. The law is silent on the frequency of awards, so organizations can get the award year after year after year. That's the last note was just what we talked about, is preliminary evaluation prior to the presentations is your decision if you want to do that. So,
Will staff eliminate the applications that aren't legal? I mean, for example, I mean, a city can apply and use the money towards capital improvements. I mean, the city could, in theory, say we want $30,000 to build an amphitheater, but an organization that's a business, that's not a nonprofit, could not do that. So will those be eliminated? I mean, we're not going to see applications that aren't legal to put through, basically.
right. So nonprofits
Correct. Yeah.
that own facilities or they can put in applications, but not for capital expenditures. Yes. So if anybody's putting in for a building, we'll pull that out.
So we won't see that in the pile.
Right.
We'll just get the ones that are legally fit this description.
Yes. And that said, nonprofit and for-profit companies can apply for this funding. There is no delineation between the two, as long as they're tourism related.
Okay. Anything else?
Dave? We can. The city can, yeah. Okay, so that's all in terms of this meeting. If you have any other questions about anything we just went over?
This would be where we have member comments. The only thing I have is the Embrace Whidbey Island County Tourism. They use a program called Datafy, and they are working now they track cell phones, and they can find how many people came. So if there are organizations that would help with submitting their data, say the music festival, they can see how many people were on the island for the first time during that event. That doesn't necessarily mean they came to the music festival, but it'd be logical to assume that. So they are asking if anyone would like that to reach out to them, or they are willing to look at the packet ahead of time and give that information to us. That being said, as stated, the primary concern is not necessarily how many people did this bring in. I mean, you do that, and something like the music festival is logically going to score a whole lot higher than some small event, but they are willing to provide that data, and they're kind of looking for a test run to do that data on.
So would you like me to include that in the instructions and procedures, just as a FYI, if anybody wants to reach out to them? for that?
When do you need to have this out? Because I want to be able to get the exact information of who to contact.
Well, this won't go live until September 23rd, so we have a couple weeks.
So it would be nice to include that, but let me make sure to get the exact contact of who to do so, because they would be willing to assist with that.
Okay,
It
that'd be great.
sounded, in that meeting, it sounded like some of those were pre-designated events too, so I would
Sure.
check in with them.
We need to
Only
flesh
because
it.
those outliers and one-offs were the ones that ended up
Yeah.
blowing the budget.
We need to flesh that out a little bit. And it
I
does.
wouldn't want to give one event an advantage over another based on that.
Exactly. So let's, do you have to actually have like a vote on that? Okay. I'll figure it out when I talk to them, because there is that, it could give an unfair advantage to somebody.
It could also be just a footnote that
Sure.
they could be used on the back end if somebody is awarded a grant.
Yep.
They could reach out to Embrace Whidbey for those numbers, because I know that some organizations really struggle to get numbers for their events that are, they put on. I mean, the marathon has the number of people that register for the event, but they don't have the actual number of people that show up in Oak Harbor for the weekend. So-
Yeah, it would just be listing it as a resource, not something that's required, not
Yeah,
something that's needed. But
right.
I know it can be a pain for some of these organizations at the end to say, this is how many people it brought in. Some of them have easy accounting, like the marathon, but something like the music festival, people aren't signing in and saying, we attended the music festival. But that could be used more, you're right, on the back end, on the reporting end, than necessarily this is what it brought. So, Margaret?
Well, it also, general marketing, you can't come up with numbers for general marketing because you're not marketing a specific event.
Right.
So like when I fill out some of my stuff, I'm NA because I don't have any answers for it, you know?
Right.
I do think that that would be very helpful. Speaking of the theater, we will have people from town, but there'll be people who come in from all over to see a show. And we don't necessarily have a way of tracking their zip code or where they came from unless they buy their tickets. But then it could be someone, Margaret could be buying tickets for her family. So we haven't always had a good way of collecting that data. So I think that that'd be a valuable resource for organizations.
Do you know if that data, I know that Placer does this where they can, I asked him, I had a demonstration. I said, okay, can you tell me who is between this block and this block on these days? And then when I was looking at the music festival, they could tell me exactly how many people and where they came from. So I don't know how advanced the Datify is, if we can actually do that, because it's our cell phone pings, you know?
They can, if I remember correctly, though, they have it set up currently so it's based on if you've been here before or not. So they're looking for unique people, not necessarily how many people are on this block at this day at this time, but how many unique people have only been to Whidbey Island one or two times. It's odd how much data they can get. What I will do is, and I should know the contact and everything, but I want to be sure, I'll email the PR person and I'll CC you, Wendy, because they may have some wordage or something in there.
Okay. That'd be great.
Other comments?
Sorry, when we're talking about dates, I'm out of town the third week in October for a Main Street, Washington meeting. So I don't know if we're looking at that date or not, but
Weren't you gone last year? Is it the same time every year then?
at the same time.
I think you did it remotely.
Maybe I remoted in, I don't know.
Okay.
But if we do the set, you know, whatever.
Do you want to look at your calendar, or you want me just to send out a Survey Monkey for the presentations the first full week of October? So it would be October 7th.
I mean, personally, I'll be available whenever I need to, but again, I'm also concerned about the two people who aren't here.
I think a Survey Monkey would be ideal.
I'm sorry.
A Survey Monkey
okay.
would be ideal.
Okay.
And if for some reason there is a conflict, if there is the option to be remote, if we have the technology for that, I mean, that could always be
Yes.
it's certainly not the preference, but, we do what we need to do.
And then just a general question, are afternoons okay for everybody? Yes. Okay. Great.
And we'll, of course, need to have it in this room, too, not the
Yes.
conference room.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything else? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you, staff. Thank you for everyone volunteering their time, and we'll get working on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.